Talking about the end of life is hard. There are so many emotions, along with so many decisions that need to be made. Where can you turn? Family and friends come to mind, but one less thought of resource is the internet. Here to explain is Mike Belsito, the co-founder of eFuneral, a resource website for end-of-life issues. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So why a website? Don't most people just go to the neighborhood funeral home?
Well, sometimes, but sometimes there's more than one neighborhood funeral home. I think back to my cousin. My cousin actually died about 3 years ago, and he was in his 40s, and where he lived, Parma Heights, there's 6 funeral homes within 2 miles. So for our family, we didn't know which funeral home was better than the other. We didn't know which could work best with our budget. So we ended up just sort of picking one and hoping for the best, and the service was fine, but I remember I'm at dinner with my wife after the service took place, and the only reason we were at that restaurant was because of reviews I read for it online.
Of course.
And that's when I realized, we as a society have more information to decide where to go to dinner than when to do something so much more important like plan a funeral service.
And so much more expensive.
That's exactly right.
So what would we find on eFuneral?
Yeah, there's all sorts of services that we offer, and the best thing for families is that everything we offer is free. So as an example, we offer the ability to register and search the area to find out which funeral homes are in the neighborhood, but then what they charge, pricing information for the various services, what the reviews are from families that have used those services in the past. We have a whole resource center where we have hundreds of articles and videos on topics related to funeral planning. We have a dashboard that helps families plan with various end-of-life services. Well, right when you log in, it sort of lays out everything that's involved with end of life, and we're encouraging people to think about the specific topics.
What's a resource center?
Yeah, so our resource center has hundreds of articles and videos on all sorts of topics related to end of life, and oftentimes those are articles that are authored by experts in their field, like licensed social workers, funeral directors, sometimes even doctors. So it's a whole base of information that families can access.
Funeral costs, they range all over the lot and can be quite expensive. Does your funeral website help us with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you're exactly right. The average funeral today in Greater Cleveland is over $8,500. But it can range greatly. You can have one funeral home that's maybe a full service funeral is $3,000 and the next is $8,500. So what eFuneral allows you to do is search your neighborhood and one by one compare one funeral home versus the other to find out what they're actually charging. And in addition to the pricing, you can also see what families have had to say about their services as well.
Now, you mentioned your site has events. What kind of events are we talking about for a funeral website? I mean,
yeah, so we're an online company, but we love to engage families and have conversations offline and in real, face-to-face communication. So one of the things that we've done is we put on these events called death cafes. And this is a whole movement that actually started out of the United States, but we brought it here to Cleveland. And what a death cafe is essentially an environment, usually in a coffee house type setting, where people talk about death and dying, but in a comfortable, relaxed atmosphere. And some of these
sort of like an online support group?
In a way, it's not a bereavement group or a grief support group, but what it is really, death is a taboo subject. So what we're trying to do is provide a place and a forum where people can have a conversation about death and not feel so weird about it. So we have all sorts of people that come. Some are approaching death. We actually sat next to a woman at our recent Death Cafe event that was 93 years old. But some are just curious in general or work in the profession as a funeral director or hospice professional.
Well, it's interesting, and you're on the cutting edge, I think. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
It's very true. Death is a part of life, and instead of avoiding the subject, the important information offered on eFuneral can help you end your avoidance over end-of-life issues. My thanks to Mike Belsito for joining us today.
Learn more about eFuneral by calling 855-338-6372 or log on to www.efuneral.com. Next, Mouth Matters.